Alright, you scum, suit up! Alright, you scum, I'm Captain Xavier, and this is the HVZ Unit, Role, and Loadout Primer. Which means you need to watch this video before you watch any of the videos about the units, loadouts, or roles. Because I'm going to answer a lot of the questions that I know you're going to ask in those videos here, and I don't want to have to answer them 1,000 times on all of those videos. So at the beginning of those videos, I'm going to tell you to come watch this video. If you then ask a question in the comments of those videos that I answered in this video, you are going to get a most prodigious rationing of snark. Or most likely I'll probably just link this video as my replies. Like, go watch it, do it, you know better. If then your question still wasn't answered, feel free to elucidate. Ask your question more concisely. But this video I'm going to go over the basics, the high level stuff, and hopefully answer as many of those questions and clear up as much of the confusion that might get created. First thing I want to remind you is that everything you do in the auxiliary is voluntary. Nothing is required, nothing is obligatory. You are free to do whatever you want at these games as long as it doesn't negatively impact other people's fun. But if you want to do something goofy and silly because you think it'll be fun, by all means go ahead. You are not required to try to be as effective as you can and as well organized. That's not required. The whole point of the auxiliary is to give that opportunity to people. And so how you choose to do things is largely up to you. How we will then utilize you may be different. So there may be consequences to choosing to run a single jolt and one dart at end war. But I'm not going to tell you you can't. If you want to do that, go for it. But I'm not going to put you in the rear guard, and I'm not going to expect you to cover my back. I may put you in the vanguard and use you as zombie fodder. So be aware of the potential ramifications of your choices. All right, so I'll talk briefly about units because I went over the majority of that in the unit formation video, how units are formed and all of that. But I will be having videos on all of the different primary unit types that I would like to see, the types of units that I know will be useful to me on the field and that I would encourage you to organize yourselves into, or at least have some knowledge of those types. So if I call for a particular unit type, if you know that your unit can fit that role, you can volunteer for that particular role. So if I call, look, I need hunters. I need a hunter squad to go hunt down that horde over there and bust it up. And you guys know, yeah, we can do that. Cool. So it's more about being familiar with the different unit types and knowing whether you think your unit is prepared for that. So I'll be talking about the different unit types, how I will be using them, and what I would recommend as a composition. How many, like, do you want 2 heavies, 4 infantry, 2 scout, whatever, in your unit would be effective for this, or all light recon for, a mission squad, or mostly infantry and heavies for a rear guard unit, stuff like that. But again, it'll all be recommendations. If you don't have the right number of heavies, you're still welcome to volunteer for rear guard or for whatever. If you think you can be effective in that role, then by all means, put yourself forward for that role. Speaking of roles are more on the individual unit, and it's kind of like classes in an RPG, but less rigid and defining. Again, it's what style of play do you enjoy? If you really like getting in and just killing as many or tagging as many zombies as you possibly can, or you really like being the one who completes the mission objectives, you really like the puzzles, or you really like just going out and being being a chaos element and causing as much trouble and being ridiculous and running silly flamboyant loadouts. That's what the roles are meant to kind of give you an idea of how those roles are going to be used, so that if I call for, look, I need 5 ferals, I need you to know what those mean so that if you volunteer, you know what to do. Or if I say, look, I need 3 heavies and 2 infantry, are you able to fill that role? You don't have to necessarily have declared yourself ahead of time. I am a heavy and I will only do heavy stuff. Or I am infantry and I will always do infantry stuff. No. You can switch roles between missions. You can switch roles in the middle of missions. It's when an officer calls for a given role, are you capable of completing that role effectively? That's what that really means. And so I will be explaining what those roles are going to be and what loadouts I think would be most effective for them. That doesn't mean that you're required. If I say, for the infantry, I highly recommend a Strifle Mark II. Does that mean you have to use a Strifle Mark II? No, you could be just as effective with dual hammer shots. I know Mowgli could be as effective with a Jolt as most of us could be with a Nemesis. So are you able to effectively fill that role with the loadout you want to run? Fabulous. Ultimately, run whatever loadout you want to run, whatever loadout you will enjoy running, whether it is super effective or completely goofy and silly. Run the loadout you want. It'll fall to me and to the other officers and to your unit commander to use you as effectively as they can given your game style. That's really the goal of all of this, is to allow everyone to really get to play their style more. Because if you really want to be, the running out and being a hunter or being a mission runner, and you just end up in that amorphous blob of 150 humans meandering around campus, you're not going to get as much out of the game as you could if you were part of a unit that was going forth and had a mission and knew what they were going to do and knew where to go and was part of a larger organization. You can get a lot more out of it. And so that's what it's about, as opposed to details. Like for the infantry, I'm going to describe a battle rifle. I'm going to recommend that the infantry unit should have what I will refer to as a battle rifle. And the battle rifle is any semi-automatic magazine-fed blaster that fires balls, darts, or half darts, if they're allowed, and has the ability to fire something bigger, whether it be mega or rockets or what have you. Any blaster combination that you can come up with that fits those requirements is a perfectly acceptable battle rifle. It does not need to be a Strife and an underslung Magnus. It could be a Hera and an underslung Cyclone Shock. It could be a Modulus with a Big Shock as the foregrip. It could just be a Demolisher. Anything that meets those two requirements works. I don't care about the specific details. Yes, we have what we will refer to as the standard Strifle Mark II, but that's not actually going to be issued or required or anything. It's just, does your blaster do what that can do? Then it works. Alternatively, can you fill the role that blaster does? So if you have 2 hammer shots, but then also a mega hammer shot, okay, you've got good firepower, you can hit multiple targets at once, and you can switch to something that can take out super zombies if necessary. That works. You don't need to ask me, can I use this? Can I use that? My answer will always be yes. Actually, my answer will be, go watch this video. But it's going to be just, yeah. If you can run it effectively, run it. If you think you'll have fun running it, run it. You don't need to ask, well, can I use a Raven with a Magnus instead of a Strife? Yes, that fits the requirements. And similarly, if you're wanting to know whether something will be effective or not, ask yourself, does it have the same functionality? Or can I use it in a way that it will have the same functionality? Because, again, I don't know what your abilities are. Mowgli could be effective with a Jolt. I couldn't. I don't run fast enough. I don't climb well enough. He does. He can do that. If you know that you can be effective with a given loadout, then by all means run it. And if I call for a certain role and you're sure, yeah, I only have a Jolt, but I'm pretty sure I can fill that role, go ahead and volunteer. I might look at you askance and go, you think you can be effective with that? And if you go, yes, I can, I'm going to say, okay, here's the mission, go. Another aspect of loadouts that I'm not going to try to dictate the details on are the internal specifications. You can run stock blasters in HVZ and be perfectly fine because most of the game is played at point blank range and you're playing against people that don't have blasters. So you don't have to worry about being outclassed by another player's heavily modified blaster. You just have to worry about being able to tag the zombie before he gets close enough. And stock blasters will do that. Now they obviously do have limitations, so if you want to modify your blaster to give you more of an edge, feel free. And as long as it still hits under whatever the FPS cap of the event, most events are going to be a 120 FPS, I don't care what the internals are. I don't care what wheels, motors, cage, battery combination you have in your Strife. I don't care what spring you have in your Alpha Trooper or what cylinder you have in your Hammer Shot. That's not a level of granularity that I have any interest in trying to control. The one recommendation that I'm going to give is that simple is more reliable. Complex gives you more versatility, so a select fire kit gives you the control of semi-auto for an infantry roll, but the high rate of fire for a full auto for a heavy roll. But it's one more thing to possibly fail. Now, if you believe your kit is reliable enough, then by all means, go ahead and use it. IRE is incredibly complex. Tier is incredibly complex. But through a great deal of tinkering and reworking, I believe them to be reliable enough that I would take them on the field. So whatever works for you is what is important. But the exact details on the internals, I don't care. Also, don't ask me what's the best combination. I don't have every possible mod combination memorized. There are a dozen wheels, a dozen cages, and a dozen motors. That means there are tens of thousands of possible combinations and permutations, and I don't have them all memorized. If you asked a dozen modders what's the best combo, you would get a dozen different answers. And there are channels like Foam Blast that have done extensive experimentation on different cage, wheel, and motor combinations. I recommend doing some research and finding out, because I don't have that information. I just don't. The minutiae are not important. It's the functionality and whether or not you're going to have fun with it. Don't run a loadout you don't enjoy just because I said it will be more effective. That's not worth it to anybody. So there. All right. Hopefully this will cover most of the questions. Hopefully I don't have to link too many of you to this. I'm sure I will. And a lot of it is just going to be, you didn't know that this video existed because I put out 24 videos in a week because I want to get all of these videos out. I understand. I will bring it up at the beginning of the video, and I will link you to the video if I think your question was answered. If you don't think it was, expand the questions like, well, yes, you said that, but this is what I'm wondering. And I'll go, oh, yeah, well, here's why that is. I'm not saying you can't comment, and I'm not saying you can't ask questions. I'm saying watch this video first and apply some common sense before commenting so that I'm not inundated with dozens and dozens of the same questions, the same, can I run this, can I use this, kind of questions. Okay, I'm going to start doing these loadout videos because they're going to be fun. I cannot wait to see you guys in the field. Bangarang!